I'm Nancy Ungerman. Today is December the 7th, and we're at the Aaron Jewish Community Center, and I'm speaking with Ida Ann Goldman today. Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Ida. Good morning. Where were you born?
In Dallas.
Dallas, Texas. So, in which part?
Well, I was born in Florence Nightingale, which is part of Babel.
Uh-huh.
And we lived, well, I didn't understand that question. Okay, let's see how I can say that. I know you have to edit
South
this,
Dallas, yeah.
Oh, yeah, but we lived with my grandfather for a very short time when I was very little, and then we moved to my Uncle Jake Goldman's duplex that he rented to us on Colonial in South Dallas.
Yes, yes.
And we lived right next door to Abe and Rosalind Katz, and then on the other side was Rabbi Abramowitz, who was related to the Hoppensteins.
And
Had quite a little group over there, but it was wonderful. It was just wonderful.
What congregation was he with?
I don't remember. That's a good question, but we were with Sheriff Israel.
From the very beginning?
Yes.
Tell me, were your parents born in Dallas?
My mother was born in Newark, New Jersey, and my daddy was born in a small farming town, that's all it was, called Zabelin, Poland.
Zabelin.
It's actually Zabelin, and right on the border of Russia. So today, it's not there. It's gone after the war, which they escaped early.
And your mother's mother?
My mother's father was actually born in Hartford, Connecticut, and then they moved to Newark, New Jersey, and that's where all the 5 children were born.
So your mother's family go way, way back here.
Oh,
They've been
we
here
have-
forever.
Yes, there are so many relatives for Harrises up in the east. It's huge, but the family is very vast, and there was not one Harris named for a boy. They were all girls, or someone didn't have, or the girls had boys, so there were no Harrises who had boys.
What got y'all back here to Dallas?
I think that my grandfather, Benjamin Harris, he and his wife wanted to come down here because she was a Kleinman, so they were related to the Kleinmans, so they wanted to come down here. So everyone was a member of Sheriff Israel. It was very nice because everyone's together.
Yeah.
But up east, there are so many relatives. I have named relatives that I email. Very nice.
Brother, your father, brothers, lots of brothers and sisters.
My father was one of 8, and my daddy was the youngest, and my mother was the youngest. And my Uncle Teddy Harris, who was a city councilman here and also on Dallas Park Board, he was an accountant for Sunbeam Bread and Goldman Baking Company, and he introduced his sister to my daddy.
That's how that happened.
Yes.
How did you meet your husband? Yeah, well, let's start with your husband's
Yeah,
name.
well, I could do that. I received a phone call from a cousin of mine, Cecile Goldman Rosenzweig, and her best friend at that time was Shirley Oaken. And they said, we want to introduce you to Shirley's cousin. And so he called me, and we had our first date, and I thought, I'm going to marry him. And that was actually in '61, February 28th, and then we married that December.
Well, do you think he said, I want to marry her?
I think so. I think so. And yeah, I really believe so. So see, he had relatives here because he's actually from Coleman, Texas. It's right outside of Abilene. And then when he was 12, he moved to San Antonio so that he could be bar mitzvah. And then he went off to school, and then he finally moved to Dallas.
So,
Very
where did
interesting.
you go to college?
I went to college at Oklahoma, and then I went to school for a half a semester at SMU. And then I went to work at Neiman's for 3 years.
Downtown?
Very exciting. Very exciting. All the celebrities.
Sure.
Sure. It
Yeah.
was wonderful.
Do you have any stories about
Who I
Mr.
met.
Stanley? Yeah. Or
Oh,
who you
yes.
met?
Well, I will tell you a crazy story. You may have to edit this. I would always be away from my counter. I was on the first floor where everything happens. Everybody, all the celebrities come in. I met Chill Wills came up to the, I just was like, oh, I know who you are. You know, and really, John Wayne's wife came up and I couldn't even talk. It's very exciting. And, but I was out of my space for a while, out of my area. And I saw Stanley Marcus and he said, Miss Goldman, how are you today? I said, yes, Mr. Stanley, I'm just fine. I thought, I better go right back. So that was a funny story there.
What counter?
I loved it.
What counter?
It was scarves and blouses. And one day, Mrs. Marcus came and she said, I'd like to see a scarf. And I sold her this gorgeous Hermes scarf. It's beautiful. And she said, now, you know, I'm Mrs. Marcus. I said, yes, ma'am, I know that. And I get a discount. I said, yes, ma'am. She was adorable. Boy, she was like that. That was very
That's
cute.
cute.
I loved working there. It was wonderful.
Do you tell me about your children? How many?
Well, I have 2 boys, Louis, who's 51, and Brian, who's 50. And Louis is in Glazier's Wholesale Liquor. He's one of the vice presidents. And my son Brian is an optometrist.
Here, they live?
Yes.
Have you voted today?
Boy, the luck
Yes.
of the Goldmans, huh?
Well, I think so. I hope so. We just like to be around all the family. Yeah, and my 4 grandchildren, 2 are in college and 2 are, one's 6th grade, one's a sophomore at Green Hill. So,
That must bring you so much pleasure.
they're all 4 just amazing, totally amazing. I'm blessed.
Yeah, you are blessed to have them living.
Yeah, oh yes. They're not allowed to leave.
That's what we all said, honey.
I know, and then they leave, right? Then they leave.
Were you brought up in a religious home?
We kept kosher for some degree when we lived in South Dallas, but we would go out all the time to state places, and Daddy was a member of the Dallas Athletic Club downtown. Uncle Jake Coleman wanted him to become a member, which he was, so we were down there all the time, you know, like having shrimp, so I don't have to tell you. So when we moved out to North Dallas, Mother said, I don't think we're going to keep kosher anymore. But for Passover, you better just get out of the house because everything has to be clean, everything on the counters, and she had her pots and pans and dishes. And my mother was always the one who had all the holidays for the Harris side. She did break fast. She did Rosh Hashanah lunch. She would do Passover, Hanukkah. Well, Hanukkah, it was very interesting. We had to celebrate on the day when the men were always off because everybody worked. So we always have it Christmas Day. Everybody was off. And we would go to each one of my uncles' homes because my aunt was already living in LA. And we would have all our Hanukkah presents and do all that. It was really wonderful. It was, so we were very close as a family.
Tell me, how large were those Passover dinners? I mean, how'd you do the tables?
Well, you would rent the tables, of course. And when Mother had it, we did the best we could. But then after a while, my daughter-in-law said, I'm gonna have it now at my house after Mother had passed away. And so she like had this mammoth room like this, and we had to, it was, because we would have my cousin Tanya's family. So right now, they're 21, and with my brother and I, we're 20. So it's quite a lot of people, but now we've had to split that up. However, we do have breakfast at my brother's house. My sister-in-law makes.
That's easier.
Beautiful. Oh, it's just beautiful. And we have Hanukkah at my son Lewis's house. And Rosh Hashanah is at my son's daughter's house, Stacy. She's very active. Stacy Bear, she's very active in the Federation. And so it's very nice. I love family. Just, but see, Uncle Jake, he used to have parties on New Year's Eve. It would rival any party you had ever seen. It was the most fun.
As just far as love and,
That's what it was all about. And since I was the youngest, really the youngest girl anyway, there was one more younger daughter, but she's been gone now for probably about 20 years, but after she married, she moved to Houston, Diane Goldman. And so, but now there are only 8 of us out of the 23.
Are there any like crazy experiences you'd like to share or remember sharing as you were growing up?
Well,
something.
In the old days, really the old days, I could get on my bike or I could get on my roller skates. I didn't even know where I was. Nowadays you can't do that. No, I mean, you have to know it. I mean, it's impossible.
Yeah.
So we were sort of carefree in those days. And my mother knew that I'd probably be home for dinner or something, during the summer. But we spent a lot of time in Los Angeles, where my aunt was, so we loved that. At the beach every day, enjoyed that. But a lot of the family, once they first started moving to North Dallas, then we found.
A question I like to ask is there any particular wisdom that your father or mother passed on to you to live by?
I have to say that they did guide my path. Totally. My mother was a natural leader. And even in brownies and Girl Scouts and sisterhood, and she was a dancer in Ruth Laird's Rockets. And after they married, my daddy said, "That's about it." and so she never worked anymore, but she was in everything. And with all our family being so involved in the city, including the Goldmans, of course, Joe Herman Goldman, who was a state rep also, besides being city council, and Adeline Harrison, of course, who was mayor. So, and they like to get me. I've never really been super involved in things because I worked, and I think that that's probably what it was. I worked off and on for probably 40 years. So I was a treasurer at Sisterhood for sure at Israel one time, but that was all that I was working, so it was very hard for me. But I liked that because it was, I wasn't doing anything then, so I could be there for the children and pick up from school and take, and then my mother had to do that when I was working. So, and then my Aunt Tilly, when she finally came back here in '73.
Go tell me about your sideline career, because it sounds like a career.
You mean besides
but you put it on the
Neiman's?
side, yeah.
Besides Neiman's,
It was Neiman's. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I worked for Neiman's for 3 years, and then I was really a secretary for most of the time. However, for a very short period of time, about 6 months, I worked for Gordon's Jewelers in North Park. That was really fun because you see everybody naturally. But I'm really a secretary, and my mother always told me, you will learn to type. And of course, you have to learn on the old Underwood typewriters. So now you just get on the computer and you're gone.
Mhm.
So I was a secretary for several different companies, and then my son, Brian, and I worked for my brother after my daddy passed away. Then I went to work for Max Goldman House and Liquor, and I was a secretary. I liked that. I really,
Sounds
really
like you're an
liked that.
early riser.
Well, you have to be, and then really, right after work, I would go straight to aerobics. So my husband, poor my husband, he had to always wait till about 7 o'clock to have dinner. But, you know, that's all, you have to do something for
Sure.
yourself.
You do. Yeah. Do you have any particular hobbies?
I really don't, per se, and I think I used to needlepoint, but, you know, when you've worked for such a long time, you don't really, the hobbies are sort of gone. Took aerobics for such a long time and played tennis on City League in Dallas. I loved that.
Sure.
But then I had to go back to work, so that's what you do.
Yeah.
But we've traveled a lot, so and my husband's not well, and so I figured that we traveled more than most, and not as much as some. But we've had some amazing trips, and I miss that. I miss the cruises, and I miss going to Europe and Canada. But that's all right.
You've had a full life?
Oh, totally,
Yeah.
absolutely. Now I'm just waiting for the grandchildren to go and see them at all their functions and volleyball games and cross country and track, and you do that,
You'll
right?
be very busy.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm terribly busy.
You'll be very busy doing that.
Yes.
I can
But my
assure you.
mother was a wonderful archivist, and she had on her wall
Oh, good, good.
framed
Should I hold
pieces
that up
like
to you?
this. And this is of my great-great-grandfather and grandmother on their 50th wedding anniversary, which was in 1915. And they married in Russia, and then they came here. Then they moved to England and with their family, and then in England had a couple more children. And then when they came to the States, they settled in, I think they went to Hartford first, because that's where my grandfather was born. He's the youngest. And then, so I never met them, but my mother framed this, and we have frames of everybody's wedding, including my grandfather and my grandmother, and then, so it's been very nice. We love this.
What was your great-grandfather's trade? What?
I don't know. I'm not sure. My grandmother's maiden name was Manson. That was the real name. And they married in Russia when he came here first. And he went through, and they're asking their names, and they said, "What is your name?" And he said, "Matt Harris," and he was going to say the next name, and they said, "Your name now is Max Harris." So that's what they did in those days. But I thought this was wonderful, and I didn't bring it, but there's a loving cup like this that is engraved with every single grandchild, great-grandchild on there for this event.
I would. That would have.
But it would have been something else to bring. It
That would
doesn't
have been
tape
a
well. I've
great
tried to take a picture of it. It just doesn't tape. It's a brass.
Yeah. How tall? How tall?
It's not tall.
Uh-huh.
It's just they gave it to every single person who was there. It had all the great-grandchildren, all the nieces and nephews. It was amazing. So I have it because my Aunt Tilly had it, so I have a lot of things.
You have to do it for a family thing.
Well, yeah, it's really sort of fun. This is a picture. I mean, I don't think you can get it. This is a picture of my mother and my Aunt Tilly. My Aunt Tilly, when she moved to California, this was taken in 1960. My Aunt Tilly became president of Hadassah there, and then when she moved back here, she became Hadassah president again.
That is an ocean there.
That's an ocean. They are on the ocean of I've never heard the city, Goleta, California. I know, it's
Such a
amazing. It's
yeah.
amazing.
Mhm.
I just had to show you that. It's just, and then my Aunt Tilly, she graduated pharmacy school in 1919. And she went to St. Louis School of Pharmacy. And they had their 125th anniversary. She was the only one here, the alums, in 1919. There was another one in 29. And so everyone just had to go meet her. I mean, everyone had to meet her because she did have 2 pharmacies altogether. And this is the book. And we were sitting at the table and with a whole lot of people who had to sit with Miss Tilly. And they would make their speeches and whatever. And they said, Miss Tilly, do you have anything to say? She said, me? What? She opens her purse and there's a 3-page speech. And I went, we're in for it now, but she was wonderful. She was wonderful because she talked about everything there. Isn't that adorable?
Yeah.
I loved it. But she had this fabulous pharmacy in California, and her husband worked in the pharmacy with her. And it was lovely. Yeah, they never had any children, so my brother and I really were more her children because we were there so often.
Mhm.
She loved the nieces. She loved all her nieces, and she loved my brother too. You know, he was the only boy. It's interesting.
Where did you get your bookkeeping skills?
Actually, my mother was a bookkeeper. I think she worked for Zesma years ago, and she learned to type. Well, she knew how to type anyway, and she would show me things. So when I was treasurer of BBG, she set up all the book for me. She always did everything, and she was our advisor. But then when I went to college, I actually took bookkeeping. I loved it. It was so interesting.
Yeah.
So I guess I always had a knack for that.
Yeah. Were you ever dragged into the computer era?
You know what was really funny, what was really funny is I was working for Glazier's, and it was a day they had a meeting with all the secretaries, and they said, today we're going to go onto the computer, and I went, and we were all, it was just like, really. So we had a little tutorial for several days, but the only problem was that I didn't have to do a lot of the things that they were showing. So it was more for the men to do other things, but of course it eliminated a lot of filing and so forth, which is, there are no files in this day and time, just very little. But I thought it was interesting, so that's how I was learned. But right now my computer is down, and I'm waiting for my man to come out in parts, So interesting.
So you did pick it up.
Yeah, you do, and you learn something new. And even if you don't want to go to work is really good therapy. I loved it. I loved being there because then you're the boss. You know what you're doing, and they rely on you, of course, always. That's what they do. And you have to be there.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have animals? Because that makes me
I
think.
did growing up. Oh, totally. Yes, Sandy was our first dog, and then I had Boots, and Pepper was her son, and they lived with us until they passed away. And my children seemed to be allergic to animals, so we just didn't get didn't get an animal. And then my son, when he was off at optometry school in Houston, the University of Houston optometry school, he adopted a kitten. I don't know how he did that. So when he was home, of course, he would always bring the cat home. And I thought, I got to get me one of these.
Mhm.
So one Hanukkah, he and his wife brought me a kitten,
Mhm.
and she was with me for 7.5 years, and then I found out that my grandchildren were a little allergic. Just killed me. You know,
Mhm.
and like any pet, but I found this woman who's a pathologist in Coppell, Texas, and she took my cat, and she has cats everywhere.
No.
And so I got to see him a couple of times, but the only thing is she didn't know me.
Mm.
You know, cats don't tend to remember, I guess. I know dogs do, of course.
Yeah. Cats
but-
go where the best can of
Right,
tuna.
right. But she lived 18 years, so, but at least she was with Margaret Bell, Dr. Margaret Bell, so.
Are your children active in the Jewish community?
You would
Because
ask
I
me
know
that, wouldn't you?
those names.
Well, Lewis is on, I think now maybe he's dropped a couple of boards, so he's probably on 12.
Yeah.
No, seriously,
We
I'm
know
sure.
that. Yeah.
I'm sure. And Brian, being in the optometry business, has always just been so active in that he never joined anything to be active. He
Mhm.
might be a member of something,
Mhm.
but not really, because he's been so busy with all the stores
Mm.
and being partners with somebody in Oklahoma City and everything, so he's been so busy.
His hands full.
But he met his wife in one of his stores. She
Mhm.
came in for an exam, and he said, "You have to come and work for me." And
That was it.
that was it.
That's great.
And then my other son, Lewis, he met his wife at school down in Texas.
Uh-huh.
That was wonderful. I know.
Do you-
I'm very blessed, trust me.
Oh, I know.
And
I mean-
my brother and my sister-in-law is like my sister.
Mhm.
I don't consider her any less.
Mhm.
And one of my cousins, Tanya Harris, is Teddy Harris's daughter.
Mhm.
She's like a sister.
So you're surrounded.
Surrounded, yes. We just had our very smallest Thanksgiving we've ever had. We only had about 30 at her house. That was the smallest one we've ever had. We don't know what to do with ourselves.
Tell me, is there any certain advice, verbal advice, that you have tried to pass on to your children? And have they listened?
Yeah, they really have, because my parents really instilled on us. Everybody is equal, totally, because after all, they lived up east.
Mhm.
They didn't have what we had here,
Mhm.
but I think because of the fact that, well, Texas, we don't consider ourselves the South, you know.
No.
We're Texas. And so as a consequence, I never was prejudiced toward anybody. I never thought that. Mark never thought that. My boys don't. And you know, when you go to a school that has Asians, Indians, you have blacks, you have everybody, you learn so much. In these private schools, they wouldn't even mess with that.
Mhm.
So I'm really glad that all happened, you
Mhm.
know. And I have black friends that I've had for well over 50 years.
Mhm.
One, actually, she knew me before I was born. Had been in my house, had been to parties. I don't think I've been
Mhm. There's no color line.
No, and my children are not that way. The children are not that way, but the grandchildren are not that way.
Mhm.
I think that's so healthy.
Mhm. And that you got from your parents. and
Right,
you
well,
were able to
Daddy
pass
always
it on.
told me just to be respectful of everybody
Mhm.
and be a lady,
Mhm. Yeah.
not in that order.
Mhm.
And Mother was just such a ballavist, you know,
Mhm.
doing everything. And I did see her save a boy from drowning once. It was very exciting. I mean, it was exciting now, you know, it was there, we
in
were
a pool,
traumatized.
in a pool.
No, in a lake.
Mhm.
And she just, we were with our scout troop, and I didn't know what was going on, but he started screaming and yelling, I guess the parents couldn't swim. There she went. But she was a swimmer. She had 16 medals in swimming, besides being a dancer. So. Very interesting. And Daddy was a golfer, had one hole-in-one, and finally my son Lewis, this year, June 28th, got a hole-in-one.
Where?
He was at the Honors Club. Now he's joined, it's in flux right now. And so he was very excited, and I said, do you know that your papa is just absolutely smiling down, just grinning ear to ear, and saying, that's my boy, that's my boy. And he said, well, what would Nanny say? I said, she'd be screaming and yelling and telling everybody that's going to happen,
Well,
Isn't that funny?
You were so surrounded by families. I always ask this question, but it probably
Who's the
never
favorite?
happened. No.
No.
The question was, did you meet with any anti-Semitism growing up?
Probably, it's so little that I, because I was a child. I went to Colonial School. It's on Pennsylvania, like right off of Colonial, but it's on Pennsylvania Avenue, right south of Forest Avenue, which is now Martin Luther King. And there was a little bit of it there, not in the classrooms, but sometime a little bit on the playground. And I just had to ignore it, so I never even made a big deal about it. There were a lot of Jewish kids in the school. Like Jane Hoppenstein was in there, and Murray London, because they're all my contemporaries. But we never, it just wasn't a thing. But then I didn't even get to go to Forest Avenue High School, where all my cousins mostly went. But I just went to, we moved to Prestonshire, so I went to Preston Hollow Elementary just as a 8th grader, and then went to Hillcrest. So see, we didn't even have any blacks in the school then. We didn't, we just didn't have anything like that. And the kids who were in BBG were respected by the kids who were in Y teens, although everyone was a Y teen. That's just the way it was. And I'm very good friends with a lot of the girls I graduated with in '56, because every 2 months we have a lunch. And I've worked on the committees for having the big 50th, which was amazing. I will tell you a funny story. Can I tell you a funny story? The 50th was amazing. It was just fabulous. And so we're leaving, and I'm leaving with Robert Glazier and his wife Phyllis, and Audrey and Alan Meyer, Quick Food Stores. And so we're leaving, and my husband turns to me. He said, "Who was that fat bald guy you were talking to?" I said, "Which one?" But it was true. It was true. It was so funny. But we're very close. And Sue Jane Baird and I are very good friends. And and I enjoy that, because that's really fun. We get to find out about their kids, and we have it at a house every 2 months, or at a restaurant.
Yeah, being able to connect.
Yeah, about
the
20
past
girls.
to the-
That's all.
Yeah.
It was so fun.
Well, what have I left out? Is there anything you can add, just to tell us a little bit about Ida? But we know plenty. We know plenty. Has Dallas changed for you? How do you like the way?
Oh my goodness. Well, in the condos and apartments, in the influx of people who've come here, I've never seen anything like it. I'm amazed, and of course, as you well know, Toyota is coming, and there is a construction site now that's going to be an amazing condo. And so we know about this because it's north of us, where I live. And they said all the condos going out, all the prices are raising so high. And I'd say that probably a fourth of the condos in this new center, because of Toyota, are already bought. I don't think they've broken ground. Very interesting. So everything is going north, all around Beltline Road to Spring Creek. I've never seen such beautiful condos, beautiful apartments. young people, which is wonderful, young people. And the schools out there are fabulous. Plano West, that's amazing. Frisco now is just got a fabulous reputation. So, you know, we're really blessed. And having my son Brian and Lewis here, of course. And of course, they always do ask me who is the favorite. Well, I'm the favorite. No, I'm the favorite. But I always tell them, even the grandchildren, my favorite is always the one who needs me. So I do tell them that. But I'm lucky. You know, I'm very lucky. So, you know, and my husband, some of his family was here, so that made it really nice. And then some of his family lives in Austin, so we go and see them, and some in Houston. But they're all coming here for bat mitzvah in May for my granddaughter. So everybody will be together. So I like him to be with his family too, and we're very close with them.
Well, thank you. What a lovely life and interview this has been.
Well,
What a
you're so
lovely
kind.
life you've lived.
Thank you. I enjoyed
You're
it
so
very much.
lucky.
I feel very lucky.
This is a continuation with Ida because she left some things out that are very important.
Okay. Well, I have to tell you that my daughter-in-law, Robin Zweig, she was president of council. She was president of the night group in council. She's been amazing. She is just a wonderful, wonderful daughter. I consider her daughter. Lori is just bright and smart and beautiful, as both the girls are, and we're all very close. I'm so proud of my girls, and Lori does a lot of things at Green Hill, you know, mothers, and she's just amazing. So I'm so happy.
And your grandchildren?
My grandchildren are something else because I just love them. They're my pride and joy, of course.
Uh-huh.
And I'm so proud of them. They're doing extremely well in school, and one will graduate in another year, and another will graduate in 2 years, and then I have
What are the names?
David Zweig. David is Lewis's son. He goes to a UTD, Dallas, and he's a junior, specializing in computer. And it's very good, very smart. And then Lauren is at the University of Kansas, and she's just very bright, very, very bright. And Matthew he'll be 16 this month, and he's in cross country and in track. But he's also does some welding and does some artwork, and he won a prize at DFW Airport when I worked at DFW Airport for 6.5 years, once a month as an advisor, just as an ambassador. And he entered a contest there, and he won honorable mention. I thought the painting was really good. And he was very young, and he goes to get the award, and it's in an envelope, and he opens the envelope, and there's just a piece of paper in there. And he says, "Where's the money?" And I said, "It's a check." It's really cute. But he is really very talented, very smart. And Katie is my little bright little 12-year-old, and she really is a very smart girl, plays volleyball. Mm-hmm. But you know, they're just loves of my life, all four of them. But I'm so lucky to have my two beautiful new daughters and my sons, and it's just perfect. Everything is perfect. Is that okay?
It's perfect.
And you'll edit it somewhere in there?
No, it's
Well,
perfect.
we'll
We're
just
talking
do
about
an
children.
addendum. No,
that
that's
was fine.
That's fine.
I mean, you'll edit it somewhere in there.
I'm gonna go get
Well,
one.
I can't wait to interview you again and find out about your great-great-grandchildren.
Unbelievable. Well, you know.